thank you for joining us for How Does a Proposition Statement Impact Everything? Today, we are joined by Andrew and Guy, who are shortly going to do some introductions, and they're going to be taking us on their journey at Vanquis Bank to see how one brand proposition defined how they think about and design for the future of digital. So before I hand over, just a bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, please do keep pinging them into the chat box, which you'll see on your section below, and they'll be answered at the end of the talk, or I think Andrew and Guy, you might sort of pick up on some during if you get a chance. We are recording the session, and so this will be made available after by email. So now I'm going to hand over to Guy and Andrew to continue. Over to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm kicking this off.
I think you are.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is going to be very informal. I don't like doing formal things, and I know Guy doesn't either. So yeah, ask questions as we go, and hopefully I'll see them. My name is Andrew Larking. I'm a designer. I am I don't know what my job title is. I think something like UX or UI design lead. I basically head up design at Vanquis, working on all of our digital channels. At the moment, the big projects we're working on is new mobile app, new .co.uk website, and various other online digital products to allow people to sort of manage their accounts online. And then I've got this other slide. Let's put in a little bit about ourselves. Can you go down?
Oh, I'll do the Carol Vardaman.
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah.
Look at that. There's me. You can't see me. That's kind of what I look like. Let's go again. So I put this in. I had a really tough meeting just before this, and this made me feel good. The waves are the voice of the tide. I think when you're doing something new, or there's like a tide of change, hence the cliched like analogy here. When you're trying to push change, it's always choppy and it's always difficult. And remember that that's actually a good thing. So that was my about me bit. Guy.
So me, my name's Guy Utley. So I founded a little company called Tall in Yorkshire. I'm also creative director when I get a chance. And my little statement's not as romantic as Andrew's. I just cut to the chase really. It's like I work with brands from a digital perspective. We've been working with Andrew's team for over 12 months now. And the reason I just put that one liner is, because it is what I do on a regular basis now, and it's been driven by, I suppose, it's been driven by years of brands not being fit for purpose and all the frustrations as a digital designer and working up through the ranks. But that frustration of working with brands that just haven't had 2 minutes spent on them from a digital perspective. So that's what I do. I do a lot of other things, but that's the things I've been doing with Andrew. Okay. Hit a bit of history, Andrew.
A bit of history. Everyone loves a bit of history. Now, I can't remember this stuff because there's a lot of facts and my memory's not very good. So I'm going to be reading from over here, but just forgive me that my head's pointing in a different way. So for those of you that don't know, and this is actually important, well, it's not important, but it's relevant. Vanquis Bank, the company that we're talking about, is part of the Provident Group. Provident has a rich, long history. So it was started in 1880 in Bradford, and I actually quite like this story. The purpose was to help working class families provide for themselves through a voucher system. So if you couldn't afford your weekly shop, or you couldn't afford to go and get clothing or whatever, you could go to Provident Financial and get a voucher for those things that you could then spend in local shops, and you could pay it back gradually. So it's a very, very early form of credit designed to help the underbanked, right? The people that the standard banking system chose to ignore. So from the very start, we've been about helping people get access to affordable credit. And that carries on today. Next slide, please, Guy.
Yep.
In 2003, Vanquis Bank was started. There were other companies in the Provident Group, but we started in 2003. And following on from the parent company, Vanquis exists to provide credit to the underbanked. So we're set up to say yes to the people that everybody else says no to. That doesn't mean that we, just going off on a tangent, I do this a lot. The people that we say yes to, the people that everybody else says no to, doesn't just mean that they're in financial difficulty or something. It could just mean that they've been through a life-changing event. So we have people that think that almost in a way stigmatize us and our customers because they think they shouldn't have access to credit or whatever. Our customers range from high court judges across, right? It's people that are earning a fortune across. But you can go through life-changing situations where your credit rating just plummets, it just zeroes out. And at that point, most high street or big lenders don't want to touch you. That's why we exist, is to actually help those people and to start them on their journey to build up their credit rating or to rebuild their credit rating. And then eventually, if they want to, they leave us and go to a more standard bank. Although it's amazing, actually, most people tend to stick around because of the level of service that we give them. But that's the very definition for why we exist. And our brand, I would say, I'm going to get myself into trouble now because somebody else who understands our brand better than me will probably argue this. But our brand for the first sort of 10 to 15 years was, I think, at the core of everything we did. Then when we got to this point, 2018, I think it's fair to say that our brand was eroding. It was probably suffering from not a huge amount of love. Brands need to be cared for. They're like a plant, right? You gotta maintain it. They need sunlight, they need water, they need trimming and things. They need maintenance. The Vanquis brand felt, this is when I joined, 2018, and the Vanquis brand felt like it had been forgotten. And there's this thing that I like to say, which is, I talk about rational and irrational quite a bit. And I think that there's nothing wrong with either of those sides, by the way. I'm a very irrational thinker, but banks are full of very rational thinkers, rational people. And I think the rational side of the business had been looked after very, very well. The business is running very, very well. But the irrational sides of it, which is normally often where brand sits, had been let go a little bit. So we'd forgotten to spend some time on the intangible aspects of what a business should be. So next slide, please. So 2020, what a year this has been. At every level, it's been a complete mess, right? But 2020, the beginning of 2020, before COVID hit, before we all had to work out of our garages, it came to a head. So we had a new person come along, who's a guy called Nick Gander, my boss, who is the director of digital transformation. He came along with a big, scary, bold vision that everybody bought into, because we wanted to do it, but also because we knew that we needed to do it. And that was, you hear about it all the time, digital transformation, but it was a complete transformation of the digital offer for our customers, because our customers were crying out for it. So that happened, and then a guy called Tom Alder, who is our customer director, he came along. He was with us already, but he kind of stood up and took ownership, and he started to communicate quite succinctly what his vision, he owns the brand, and he started to communicate what his vision for the brand was. So those two pivotal moments happened. And then at my first meeting with Nick, he said, what's your biggest challenge that you need to solve? And for me, it was brand. It became clear that the brand identity wasn't strong enough, and I think in many ways it's fair to say that it was completely absent. Guy touched on it earlier. But a lot of the time, brand company will come in, they will do an amazing piece of work. They will give you a phenomenal reason for why your business exists and why people should care. But they often give you a brand identity that forgets digital. You know, they'll say, this is what your tube advert's going to look like. This is what your business cards are going to look like. And they may say, this is what your website could look like, but that's not digital. They forget that. And for us, that was kind of missing. So we were facing into the challenge of designing a load of complicated new products, but without that brand identity. Nothing was aligned. So for me, the question was, how do we redesign every experience for our customers when we've only right now, at the beginning of 2020, got the thinnest thread to hang it off of? That was kind of that was the challenge. So 20 minutes after the conversation, I think, Nick's on the call, he may be able to like tell us in the chat, but it was about 20 minutes after the conversation. And we had where Nick called me and said, you need to speak to Guy. Talk to Guy. I've set up a meeting with Guy. I've worked with Guy before. Go talk to Guy. So I walked downstairs, and this guy was stood there, and it's like the beginning of a love story, right? And we had a session, and that was the beginning of this story that you're about to hear.
Okay, I'll give you a voice of rest.
Cheers. Did I go on a bit?
No, not at all. We need to know the landscape. We need to know where it started and what the problem was, and we'll go a little bit more into the problem. But they start with, I guess, where the information we were given and what we had to work from. So the process that Vanquis were in, and the point that we're at, where we're developing some 3 core pillars. Pillar 1 was, it's a unique. Vanquis' unique setup means we're able to accept those banks that say no, as Andrew was saying earlier on. Because Vanquis believes that the customers deserve help on their journey to better credit. Pillar 2, we put the customers in control, so we know what matters to the customers. So we never give them products and so we only give them products that continuously improve their credit score. And then the third one, we put the customers on the team. So it's we believe everyone deserves respect. Always doing the right thing for the customer. The products are always in their best interest. So working off those 3 pillars, which all added up to a single brand proposition, we stand with our customers on their journey to a better and fairer credit. So we had 3 great pillars. We knew that was based on a lot of research and hard work that the Vanquis team had done, and comfortable with the proposition itself. But that didn't really help us, or we didn't feel it was really helping with the brand side of things. It was a really good start and a good base to work from, but we believe we needed to stand up on that. Okay, so this is where we started. This was a fairly new refresh. I think, if I'm right, it was only a couple of years old. And Andrew, is that right? It was only a few years old, wasn't it?
I think it was even that old.
Right. Okay. So there's been some attempts to give it a bit of a refresh. But what we saw straight away, and the reason Andrew's team was struggling with it, was it was a PDF set of guidelines that was predominantly based on offline materials. We did have, I've been fair and I put in some of the sort of app designs in there, but fundamentally the detail from a digital point of view just wasn't there, and that was causing some really big headaches for the digital team across website, social, and the app development. So that was our kind of starting point. There were a few things we identified were missing straight away. What did Vanquis sound like? What was the personality? How did they move? So we got into that conversation quite quickly. The way that we approach that is looking at some core principles. These are based on the pillars. So the 3 core principles, after a lot of work, what we got to were building, journey, and control. How did we know these were correct? We tested them a lot. we talked to customers, we started to visualize some of the stuff you'll see in a minute. We started to visualize some of these and communicate how we would go about working with these three core principles. So along the way, it's important that we talk to the customers without going off down some tangent or idea that we feel's right, but we've not seen any reaction from the customers. So what do these three things mean? Celebrating success for a better credit score. So the building up a credit score, you know, the building up a positive situation with the customer. We're showing them a nice way out sometimes, fixing problems. And the journey side, again, it's a way to show progression. So we've got app journeys and website journeys, credit score journeys, application journeys, but it's generally the top level. It's we're on a journey with the customer. And then the control is giving control to the customer, you know, giving them the clarity, the simplification of messaging, and easy to use and easy to understand so that they can make the decisions and feel in control. So
can somebody remind me later to talk about compression and release with regards to control?
I will.
Okay.
So three core principles, you know, on the face of it, quite simple, but different to the pillars, and an extra level and a layer that we can actually start to work with from some themes and UX and UI, which we'll get into. So from a visual point of view, this started to look something like this. You know, we had, and we'll go through a lot of this, but this is to give you a bit of a preview of some of the areas we're going to talk about. A lot different to this slide you saw a few slides back. So I'm going to start on the two key areas that I think we're keen to get onto today, which is the UX themes and the UI principles. Again, there's some simple thinking under this, based on talking to our customers, or talking to the Vanquis customers. Some key things that came out of it, that we wanted to ensure the brand integrated. We didn't want to have a frustrating time for UX and UI designers and marketeers by trying to shoe on a really nice brand idea into UX, and it just being that pain in the backside that you've got to find a way of getting the brand in, rather than doing your job of a UX designer and making something simple. So the things have got to work together. But from a customer point of view, we knew it was important to ensure that they always felt leaving like the experience was one of options and positive. Even when the scenario sometimes wasn't that positive, we always had to show like a way out or some advice or the next step to do, never leave them with a dead end. So the UX themes are focused on what people feel and being empathetic. And then the UI theme principles, they focus on how things might look and work, which is a given and obvious, but it's how do we bring in that feeling and the building, the journey and the control into both of those areas. We start with the colors. You may have seen on the slide earlier that, you know, there's a lot more colors, it was a lot more colorful. The original colors we had, it wasn't that they were bad. I just think they'd not gone into enough detail to be able to have enough control within the from an accessibility level, vulnerability level, which we'll get onto, but also just from a flexibility level. You know, we've got lots to consider now, light modes and dark modes and all sorts of things being thrown at us on a regular basis. So the idea was that we looked at this, we didn't just bin it by any means, we tested it, and it evolved with our customers on board, testing it with us. What did they like? What didn't they like? And we ended up with a bit more of an advanced palette. Some of a lot of the colors were in there. We had some more levels to them, different shades and slight tweaks to them. But it was something that could be applied to all areas of digital, from alerts and nudges and celebration, sometimes even commiseration, but a color palette that we could use across the board. We also
testing as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
When we did the testing, oh, you're onto it now. Yeah. When we did the testing as well, you know, you do the standard testing for contrast and, you know, the WCAG guidelines and things, but they they're not up to modern requirements for digital design. So we created a couple of groups, test groups. One was for customers with different sort of assistive digital needs, sort of different accessibility needs, and they tested colors from a usability point of view. And we had all 8 forms of color blindness testing. We had a huge variety of different kind of visual impairments that we could test the colors with in different combinations, which was super useful. And then we tested with the new and nightmarish to design for, but the biggest and most beautiful design challenge I think any of us will face, which is designing for vulnerability. So we set up a group of people that would be considered by the banking world as vulnerable customers. And for those people, we were testing the colors against how they made them feel. So if you've got a customer that suffers with quite a high level of clinical anxiety, how do the different colors and the combinations with different messages and tones of voice, what does that evoke? So we did a huge amount of testing to arrive at the colors, and the red one that you're seeing at the bottom, the acid berry, we tested over 40 different reds to arrive at one that did the right thing of grabbing their attention when their attention needs to be grabbed, but does it in a way that's not like a blood red would do, which actually induces a lot of anxiety. So there's a huge amount of testing in just these colors.
Yeah, I think I've got a couple of examples I've just pulled a couple out, but I think the line to end with that a world of color means different things to different people. So whilst we were keen on trying to keep some of the colors in there, we knew they could only be used for certain areas and for certain functions. So for example, we had a color called lemonade, but to make it accessible, it required so much of a darkening. It just ended up looking like puke. It would just look like a mucky orangey yellow. It was just awful. So it'd gone from this lovely lemonade color to a darkened version of it. So we didn't want to lose it completely, but to keep the accessibility standards, we just removed it from functional areas where we needed to have text overlaid and whatnot, and we've kept it from a more celebratory visual point of view, where accessibility isn't quite as strict. So we've kept that in there for that reason. But just going back to Andrew's point on the acid berry red, we knew that worked. We knew that the customers liked it, that it made them focus. They wanted something that was going to get their attention and that they wouldn't miss. So we found ways of using that from a functionality point of view. One thing, the biggest problem we had was the Vanquis Blue. So the Vanquis Blue was a big part of the brand. The problem is it did not test well at all with vulnerable customers. So we had a bit of a dilemma here. We couldn't get rid of it because it was embedded within everything that had been put together in the new brand, and it said Vanquis, but we had to find a way of using it that would sort of reduce some of the anxieties that we'd been getting on some of the testing. So to do that, we developed some volumes, some color volumes. We've got a lower color volume, which is sort of more for a more corporate affair. This is for usage in annual reports and shareholder agreements and the sort of more corporate level, obviously. But it's still aligned with the brand values, personality, and what the company needed to see. And when you see that executed in creative, it still works really well. It's add the right tone of voice, the right messaging, the right shapes and imagery, you've still got a friendlier version of what we had before using the corporate colors. It's just we start playing with other colors alongside the Vanquis Blue. So Vanquis Blue doesn't become the most prominent color, and we soften it up. So we retested the Vanquis Blue with creative like this, and we saw the positive rate go up, and the feedback become really good on the Vanquis Blue, and it tested really well.
You just said something there, which I think is maybe worth calling out. You just said that you just mentioned I can't remember what you said, but it was something like when we tested the blue, we saw anxieties. and I think it's worth discussing that. So
On the yeah, when we're using a lot of blue.
yeah, so when we
Yeah.
the Vanquis blue, which is this one bottom right on the screen now with the cute little face on it. This is a really interesting color because it's not a bad color. It's actually quite nice, and you can do quite a lot with it. But we discovered two, and this is why I love customer testing. I love our customers because they just tell you things that you couldn't make up. They're brilliant. And there were two things that came out, and one of them was, even though it is a perfectly accessible color with black or white text at pretty much any size, people were saying that they were struggling to read body copy on it. And what we discovered, we're actually working with a Great Ormond Street Hospital, and they're running a big study for us about colors and readability and information intake and things. And what they discovered was this blue sits right at this point, right at this cusp. If there were a chart, you'd chart it like this, and this blue sits right there, where it's accessible, but your eyes struggle to see the gaps between the words, because the contrast is right at a point where your eyes can't really see, and so it kind of makes it blurry. So it's technically accessible, but it isn't. And customers were telling us that, are the words moving? I don't like that blue. Something about it makes it hard to read, which was really interesting. I'd not heard that before. And the other thing that they were telling us was it made them feel anxious. And if you think about that, it's obvious why. If you've ever suffered any kind of like financial hardship, you don't trust banks. Banks are like the people that you don't like. Doesn't matter how good your bank is. If you've ever struggled for money, you just naturally grow this kind of like feeling inside you that the banks are the enemy. And this blue was a strong banking blue. It's always been kind of our blue, and a lot of banks use a lot of blue. And so that anxiety that's held deep within a lot of our customers started to come up. So we had those two things where we can't get rid of it because it is our core brand color, but we can't use it massively because it induces certain levels of anxieties with some of our customers, and some people can't read body copy on it. So they were the two things that never would have come up if we were just looking at it, but only came up through extensive customer testing.
The good news is it tested really well when we started combining the other assets that we developed. So we had this, what we thought was going to be a problem, to try and lessen those anxieties and have it test well. And actually, when we went into the higher, the higher volume, where we thought, this is going to make it a lot friendlier, this is going to soften it up, they actually tested very similar. So the Vanquis blue that was softened up with colors and the messaging, the shapes, and then the more colorful higher volume, actually there wasn't that much in it, which I don't know about you, Andrew, but I was really surprised at.
I was very surprised.
So again, I think we learned something off the customers, because if I would have been, putting a bet on it, it'd be, this go down more the colourful route and try and sort of shy away from the blue. But we saw that they both worked fine. From a rollout of the brand for Vanquis, we wanted the option to sort of keep with more of the Vanquis blue that was familiar, obviously, to the current audience, and then over time, sort of turn that volume up and use this on the mainstream communications. But we certainly wanted to keep this for the talent recruitment campaigns and charity events and everything else that we do. We had this kind of celebratory set of colours. But the good news is we could use both. So that's what we found out quite quickly. So we start with colours. I'm not going to go into fonts today, but we did the same with the fonts and a tone of voice. But today we're talking about UX themes and UI. So I'll move on to that. So in the themes, so the themes sit under the core principles that we've developed, which sit under the pillars. I'll point from the same place. But the themes we looked at that we felt that would be really helpful are these ones. So personalization, making it all about the customer, celebration and compassion, showing empathy at the most important times. Moments, we remember the moments that let's make an impact where it matters, and then a conversation bringing the human interaction to our customers. So we'll go into the first one in a little bit more detail, making it personal. The thing with Vanquis is they don't offer like a one-fits-all service. Everybody, all the customers are very different. They've all got their unique situations, sometimes problems, requirements. So we thought, well, the digital experience needs to reflect that, and our design should be flexible enough that the information can be accessed how it needs to be, and the choices can be made clearly. We wanted to respect their emotional state. So we've already touched a little bit on that with the color side of it, making sure the color's doing the right thing at the right point. So if there's something that they should not miss, because it'll be a detriment to their credit rating, it should be red, it should be prominent. If there's a piece of information that we need to make them aware of, we've chosen honeybee orange. Honeybee? Got that right. Oh, no, I'm really scared then I got that wrong. It just shocked me. Honeybee orange. So it's, you know, and we use that because it's different to the other interface colors, and it stands out, but it's just to give a gentle nudge, as in, you know, are you sure? You just want to double check that. We'll maybe give them a little bit more information. So what we're trying to do with respect to their emotions is at every level trying to reduce their levels of stress and anxiety, and different scenarios for different people, with different messages. And then we don't create barriers. So we've got some little cool functions in the UI and UX which allow them to see things that might be coming and give them a little peek into what might be there, and making things clear. And then there's also the things we've already touched on, like, you know, making sure that people with color blindness can actually see and read what they're doing. We have a great chap called Corey whose job it is to make sure that the voice design works just as well as the visual design, so that when that option's turned on, the screen reader software can see it. So it's making sure that we're not causing barriers, we're taking them as aware. Personalization. So remembering their choice, you know, really we do try best we can to you know, give that user, you know, if they've logged in with their user account into the app, then let's try and customize that. So if they've chosen options about and identified that they're colorblind and X, Y, and Z, that should stay as they want it. How's the customer interacting with us? Talking on their level, both accessibility and tone and everything like that. What products are interested to them? Make sure that we're only showing them the products that they're interested in. So, you know, that from levels of personalization, these are the types of things that we feel that tick those boxes and make that user, that customer feel like that app has been developed or website has been developed for them. Celebration of compassion. For me, I think this is one of well, probably the most important theme for Vanquis. You know, this isn't going to apply to every business at this level, but dealing with the type of customers Vanquis have got, you know, making sure that we visually, emotionally, and from a message point of view, build that relationship up with them and think about their feelings in the right way. It's just so important to me. So, you know, simplicity is key. You know, giving them a little, you know, I think it was come from one of my head of design, but giving them a little digital fist pump along the way to say they're doing the right thing and that they're doing well, and yes, you know, well done. You know, I always show them that the next step and the route forward. These are really, really simple things, but I think it's the little micro moments, the little animations, the little visual references, and the little messages and the little fist pumps that make the massive difference for a customer in this situation. And we have a lot of fun doing that bit. That's the most fun bit as well, so that's why I enjoy it. So the little micro moments. So, you know, this is micro moments is the term that's becoming more widely used in our industry. But the micro moments are these are the little ways we can inject the brand personality. So whilst we've got the functional colors, UX, journey, micro moments are a really nice way of bringing in some brand. And, you know, you've got to give this kind of like a little sprinkling of this, and not, this doesn't want to become overbearing and you know, in your face. But it's just, again, at the right time, maybe when they've completed a certain journey, been given some great news because they've done something. Again, it's just a little, you know, where with you and well done. The memorable moments, you know, but giving them a profound customer experience. And this this drives the brand value. It, it's become, Vanquis becomes that brand that they remember. So these are the moments that become memorable and tick off a lot of boxes in terms of showing that with the bank of there's real people behind this. Okay, so that kind of covers the UX themes. In terms of how we implement them from a UI point of view, we've also got some themes. We love themes. First one is focus. The path to better credit is always clear. We're here to help bring focus. So how do we do this from a UI point of view? It's not about everything being prominent. It's about having the right thing prominent. And me and Andrew have looked through a lot of the competitor apps, and Andrew presented some screenshots of, I think it was Monza, NatWest, a few others I'm not going to name because I might get in trouble, but they were literally throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you on the first screen, and actually you only needed I'm stealing your thunder massively here, Andrew, because you showed me the stuff, but they were trying to show you everything. Every service, every product, every message, and every piece of information. And we know from the testing, actually the customer wants to know two things. What's their current borrowing and what do they need to pay off? They needed those two pieces of information at that point. So why give everything to them? That just raises anxieties, confuses. So we're not about that. So we're talking about prominence here. And it's about balancing attention and focus to the things that they need to action or the decision that they need to make. Dead simple. How do we do it? There's a few ways we've done it. Color, again, is an important one. You can see from using different colors, and we've touched on the acid berries and the honeybee oranges, but just generally colors. But we've also got elevation and depth, so we can bring things up that needs to be action first to a higher level of elevation. We can use clever way of using shadows to again give prominence to certain pieces of information that we need them to focus on. Scale with depth. We really like the idea of depth. Again, it's a really nice, subtle, clever way of bringing information up to the user in the right order. So we've got a couple of really sort of small examples of this. But this is a small little snippet taken from the payment screen or the home screen, I believe, but a pretty simple concept. Basically, highlight the bit you want them to see and be paying attention to, and then take down a level of the stuff that's secondary. They're dead simple, but it's also a really nice way of condensing content, so you're not having to have everything fighting on top of each other. So achieving a depth with blur, we're going into some of the detail here from the sort of design system that we're putting together. That's the task we're putting together now. The design system goes in. What are the little tactics can we use? We've got some blurs. We didn't invent blurs. It's not ours to own, but we know it would work. And again, it just allows us to identify the thing to focus on. Again, it's very dead simple. So with the layers and the sizes, the drop shadow and the blurs, it allows us a lot of flexibility in that area. This is the bit I really like. We nicknamed it the peaks, and we've got 3 different sort of types of peaks. The peak is basically giving them a peek of what's to come. So if there's a piece of information and you're struggling with an area, especially in the app where we're quite kind of low on actual space. I was thinking of a posher word then, but I couldn't. It's too late. So we haven't got much room to play with. So the peaks are a great way of giving them a little hint of what's to come. And I've got a little animated version of this, some early concept work. So on the left, you've got some transactional information. If I just play, yeah, that's going to play. So that just gives you a little peek into it. And if you're interested, you can actually then tap into that, and that will bring you with information. Same with the middle one, little peek. I want to know more. It'll bring in the full transaction information. Payment option, little peek. The peaks can also be used from a functional point of view. So that's peaks. Dead simple, but a really nice way of keeping the content to a minimum at the point that the user wants to read it and see it. Again, lessening anxiety, keeping them in control, all the things we've talked about. Yes, over to you, Andrew. Have a beer.
What is there to say? I haven't prepared anything to say for this, but I'm just going to riff on it. So some things I think that are worth talking about. I can't get my keyboard to work. Is so what you're seeing now is the first iteration of the redesign. It's called Twin Tip. It's named after my favorite type of pen, the Magic Marker Twin Tip.
I didn't know that.
Hey,
I've worked with for how many months and I didn't know that.
there is a Magic Marker Twin Tip. It's got 2 tips. My favorite pen. It's a beautiful pen. Everyone should go out and buy a full set. And this was what it was named after. But we've glossed over a lot of stuff because we don't have like a week to talk through it. But from all of the customer testing we spent, I think it was 282 hours talking to our customers about what the home screen should look like. And when we which is this one here, and this has changed since we did the deck, it's changed a little bit. And what came out from the customer, when we do customer testing, we're not just putting designs in front of them and saying, what do you think? We started off doing a load of just conversations, and we got to know our customers really well. Like, what do you do for a job? How many children have you got? What do you do day to day? What are your hobbies? What are your fears? Where do you want to be in life? Really starting to understand these people, and so that we could tease out of them patterns. We wanted to see patterns amongst all these different types of people, what they wanted. And it became really clear. Guy spoke about it earlier, but there's 2 really interesting things that came out. The first is they kept on saying they wanted to know what their current balance was, what their available spend was, and then if they had to do something, what was the next action they had to take? So if they had to make a payment soon, how much was it and when did they have to do it by? Or if they'd set up a direct debit, when was that direct debit going to come out and how much was it for, right? They didn't want anything else. And when you look at, all of you now, if you're not using your phone to watch this, open up your banking app. And what you'll, we did have slides on this, but we took it out because we didn't want to sort of rip on any other people's apps because it's not fair, because we don't know.
But I named them all anyway.
He's like, yeah.
I named most of them anyway.
Yeah, but like, we don't know the design challenge. We don't know what the design team at Monzo had to face into. So it's not fair to have a go at Monzo. But something that really surprised us was everybody looks at Monzo as a fantastic app and a fantastic service. And what we heard starting off in one of the vulnerable customer testing groups was that it was becoming an unusable app. And we were shocked by that, actually. Well, no one says that about Monzo. And we started digging into that quite a bit, and we found something really fascinating. And I love this. I absolutely love. I love this so much. There's an expression in architecture called compression and release. So if you go into like all big buildings, if you go to any Frank Lloyd Wright building, specifically, you'll see this in all of his buildings. But you go to any big building, you'll see a lot of the time, massive big building with a really tiny entrance. And the entrance a lot of the time is a load of like horizontal and vertical lines, big, strong lines. And that's designed to compress you as you walk into the building. It's designed to make you feel small. So the building is awe-inspiring to you. But it's also designed so that when you walk in, and in a lot of people, that feeling of being compressed can also induce anxiety and low-level fear. And then as you walk in, you get this release where you go, it's big, it's beautiful, it's airy. And so the more they can compress you as you walk into the building and as you approach the building, the more grand it seems when you get in. So architects use this kind of like negative emotion to give you a much bigger positive emotion when you enter, right? Now that's architecture. What's that got to do with apps? Our customers started to express this feeling of compression before they even opened up their banking app. So when they were going to grab their phone, when they knew they had to open it, as soon as they grabbed their phone, they started to feel this compression. And when you ask them to explain that, it's anxiety, fear, loss of control, right? Which is, okay, that's interesting. We need to dig into that. So when we dug into that, what it came down to was And the reason it was really interesting, this is important, was that it wasn't just customers that had been through financial difficulty in the past or were facing financial difficulty right now. Healthy account customers were telling us the same thing. Right? So people that weren't expecting any nasty shock were telling us the same thing. So that's why it's interesting. And so we started to ask them, what is it about this app that's making you feel that? Because you know what you're expecting. And it was the level of information. And the level of information that's on the screen gave them a loss of control because they didn't actually understand what they had to do next. They didn't understand what they were looking at. So we looked at all these banking apps, and it's really interesting. If you open up Monzo, any of you that have got Monzo, open it up now. There's a load of information. At the top, around there at the top, is your current balance. And that's the only figure that people really care about, because from that you can gather everything. But underneath it is a load of stuff you just don't use, like freeze cards. You hardly ever use it, maybe once or twice a year. So it shouldn't all be presented to you. So this feeling of compression as they go into their banking apps, they stayed in that feeling when they were in their banking app. And when they stay in that sort of emotional state, their ability to make informed decisions is reduced. So we were like, actually, everything that we've got to do, everything that our brand says that we stand for is about, if you're about putting a path, putting customers on a path to a better everyday life and with them on a journey to better credit, they need to make informed decisions. If they can't make informed decisions because you're throwing everything at them, then the app's UI and the app's UX is pretty clearly laid out for you. You've got to give them just what they need when they need it. And anything else has got to go away. So that's where TwinTip came from. The screen that you're looking at, as simple as it is, went through, well, before we arrived at this one, there were 7 radically different designs that went through a year's worth of testing with customers, believe it or not, a year, to come up with something that's so minimal. And it was tested and tested and reduced and reduced and tested and reduced until we got to just this core, which tests beautifully and looks like no other banking app. So that's kind of the story. It all came out of this one little nugget that our customers gave us, that when we really looked at it and we went, that doesn't sound like Vanquis wants to sound. That doesn't actually behave the way that Vanquis says we should behave. In other words, these banking apps don't enact the brand that Vanquis wants to be. That was the sort of trigger point for us totally rethinking what a banking app should be.
I think the next step is just to show we're going to inject some sort of brand personality through the micro moments throughout the app. Yeah. So we've got a couple of slides on that, haven't we?
Should we show the next one? It's one of my favorite colors. Oh, go back to the orange.
Sorry.
The yellow, the bumblebee. We've changed this today. Oh, all the buttons at the bottom, the primary call to actions have all changed, Guy. So you'll get
change every day.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, we've got to get them good. So this is bumblebee. So this color is used when a customer needs to be aware of something, but they don't have to enact it right now. They don't have to do anything about it right now. So it's a dismissible kind of nudge, really. So this is when a payment is due fairly soon. You don't have to pay it today. You can pay it in 3 days if you want, but we're just letting you know. And then the next color, which is the one that always causes people to go, are you sure, is the acid berry red. The acid berry red is the one that I still question. Doesn't matter how many times customers tell us that this is right, I still question it, because everybody's told, like, if you're dealing with customers with anxiety, you're dealing with money, you don't want to put a big load of red there. That's what we know. That's on the UX tick list. That's on like the Nielsen Norman Group tick list of things to avoid, is this. And yet, this screen was designed by our customers. Our customers were in the room and they designed this. And they told us, again, I think we went through 40 something different versions of the red before we arrived at this one. And it's our customers that told us, if I need to do, if I've missed a payment, shout it at me. Like I need to know, you need to tell me. And there's other things that we would do, there'd be SMSs and emails and stuff, so that they should be aware. But they need to know that they've got to do something. And we're not showing it now, but depending upon where the customer is. So in this instance, the customer's just missed one payment. and you'll see it doesn't say make a payment, it says see my options, because it may be that the customer has just forgotten it, in which case they don't want us being too nice, they just want to pay it and move on. But it could be that the customer can't afford to pay it, or they need to pay it in stages, or whatever it is. So whenever a customer gets into this kind of stage, it's always about see my options. And I can talk from personal experience that most banks don't do that. Most banks say, you owe us money, give us money. It doesn't live up to the Vanquis brand, right? So we're not doing that. So whenever you get into this kind of state, we make it very well known that you need to do something now, but there's always options. There's always an onward path, and we're always with you on that journey to solve it. So that, but yeah, the red still makes a lot of people go, are you sure? But
So
got to trust what the customers say, right?
I don't know if we said at the beginning, but this is kind of, we're obviously still in quite early stage development of things. This brand, the brands only just being rolled out. We've got an MVP app this year, and the website's getting looked at, but it's very, we're starting to roll out this thinking over the next sort of year or two. We have started playing with a couple of micro moments and bits and bats, and I just wondered if we should show some of that, Andrew, do you think?
Yeah,
got a couple of slides in it.
Fun stuff.
A lot of fun stuff. So this is very early stage stuff. So when Andrew was talking about sort of, the intro to the app, we've got a bit of this. You start seeing the brand really come through now. Less functional stuff, just nice. This is your doorway. This is your opening up into big space. The next slide shows little payment suggestion. You got here, you get the honeybee in the right amount. You get a little celebration using the little shapes. The validation code on the left, again using the shapes as a accompanying little graphical device, just to signify you're doing the right thing and you're progressing. So it's the little touches, so we can start to weave in the brand elements into the app, even in functional areas like this. That's where we're at. We've got a lot more to do. We're still got a hell of a lot more to do. But I think the good thing is, and what we feel comfortable, and the important thing is the customers feel comfortable with it so far. The team are using it. We've got UX designers, developers, UI designers actually using this already. That it is usable, and it meets the pillars that we'll put together at the top. But we're able to use it in an actual functional way in a digital world, which is refreshing. So yeah, that's me. Questions,
yeah,
I suppose.
I think we're 2 weeks into the design system. Well, this is week 2 of creating the design system using this app. So the homepage that you just saw will be what it looks like for MVP, and probably a little bit beyond that. But we will over time be dialing the brand up. Yeah. As we learn about it, right? So this is a new brand identity. It's very different from what we had before. We need to understand it. We need to learn about it. So we will gradually be dialing up across social media and email comms and app and website and other bits and pieces. This is very early days. So if anybody, I'd say if anybody wants to sort of like, I guess watch a new brand and design system and app and everything be built live, which is what we're doing, then let us know, because I think we will be starting to share this more widely as we go. Good things and bad. Yeah,
the headaches as well as the good.
Yeah, headaches. Many headaches.
I just wonder if there's any questions. Has anyone got any burning?
Andrew and Guy, thank you so much for sharing your journey so far. I think, like you said, now let's just head over to the chat box for some questions. I think I've had a couple of questions submitted directly, so I'll just kick off with a couple whilst everyone else prepares. So you mentioned that you're obviously on the start of this journey. What is coming next, and when can we see it? And where can we see it?
Well, what is coming? I'm not sure what I'm actually allowed to say, because so I think my boss is so if I'm not allowed to say something, just call me. By that point it'll be too late, so I would have said it. So we do basically everything that is customer facing will be going through a refresh. So you've got app, you've got online sort of account management, sites and products, all of that kind of stuff, public facing websites, the journey to actually go through and become a Vanquis customer, social media, everything to do with applying for a job, getting a job, your first few days in a job, all of that kind of stuff is being reworked. What was the second part? Was it what, when, and how? When, there's a refresh, a very first low-level refresh of vanquis.co.uk going live early in 2021. So that's probably going to be the most public way that you can start to see the new brand coming to life. The app, the MVP of the app will be going live in the end of the third, beginning of the first quarter next year. And the app is going to be where we dial the brand up probably the most. And then all the other platforms will gradually start to adopt the new app as we work on them, because they're products. How can you find out about it? Sure, that's one for you, isn't it? Like, you do all of these events, so like you should probably like answer that one. I really want to. Nick sent me a message. He's probably telling me April. The app will be live in April. I personally would love to start sharing this stuff publicly. Right. I would love to have a public space where we can talk about the design process, talk about all the research, talk about what we found, share successes and failures. We do have a Dribble account, so we'll probably just start sharing everything on Dribble.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Next question that I got directly was, how does data impact your decisions around design?
Right. This is where I'll be really honest. We have to date had hardly any access to data. So the data that we've got is we've got a lot of data on how our customers behave, like spending habits and all that kind of stuff. And that's quite useful. But we haven't had much data in the way of user insights. I can tell you how much money they pay back through the app each month, but I can't tell you why they chose the app or why they went through the journey in that way or anything. We don't have that. So we've been gathering data through a tool called Maze. So we have a guy called Reese who runs our, works in the design team gathering customer insights and doing customer testing. That's his full-time job. He runs customer interview sessions on average 3 times a week. So we have, I think, between 5 and 9 customers per day, 3 days a week that he talks to. But we also use a tool called Maze. So we'll do in-vision prototypes, and we normally do a few iterations because a lot of the time we don't know. And then he will send out these Maze prototypes, and we'll send a prototype out to 20, 30,000 customers. And then we can get data on how they went through. So between the two things, we've got like the deep insight on what they're thinking, and then through Maze, we've got like a bit more insight in what they do. However, very exciting. We've got a new, I don't know his title, so we've got a new guy that started, whose job is just to get us data. So going forward, all of our digital channels are going to be hooked directly into some awesome analytics tools, and we're going to be able to get a load of data. And that's going to change everything, because at the moment, the best we can do is just ensure that our designs aren't going to cause the customer detriment, but we don't know which of the 20 that we come up with are going to work. And Amar's going to tell us that one works for this reason. And that's his only job, and I cannot wait.
Great, thank you. And then last one, which was, how important is content design?
Is Corey on the call?
Yes.
We should get Corey to dial in an answer. Content design is, he's going to ask for pay rise. I think it's the most important part of the design process. Content is king, content is queen, whichever one you say. For those that don't know, there's the standard design process, right? Where you have a problem statement, you solve it with a load of people, or think you've solved it. You do testing, and then you iterate, and you keep going until you see what you want to see, and then you release. Content design is exactly the same process, but for content. So we have a guy called Corey who's on the call, whose job is content design. So his job is to make sure that everything our customers read, any images that we use, even, he doesn't know this yet, sorry Corey, even like the iconography that we use, make sure that customers understand what it means, that they can actually take it in, they understand what it says, and they're making informed decisions based off of it. If you don't do that, it doesn't matter how beautiful your brand implementation is. If your content design is bad, then your entire experience is bad. So content design is massively important. There's a side thing to content design, which is a fantastic challenge, which is voiceover content. So if you have some text in a button which says tap to see more, well, you can't write that if the content is for assistive digital. So if somebody turns on voiceover on their phone, read aloud, then you have to redesign the content. And when you redesign the content, the way that you would say something to somebody is different than how you would present it with words. So the content hierarchy of the screen changes. So for every single screen that we design across all channels, we have to design it at least twice. And there's actually more, which is why we do component-based design. But these are details, and ping me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat like this for hours. But for every screen you've got, this is what most people will see and read, and that's tested. But then you've got, if they've got assistive digital turn on, you've got, okay, how would you explain that to somebody if their eyes are closed? And you read out the content in a different order, which means that you need to redesign the screen so that the voiceover software will read it out in that order. And then you've got that middle state of, but some people can see it, but not that great. So they're going to have assistive digital turn on, but they're still going to interact with it. So you have to redesign your interactive elements to fit with that as well. So content design changes everything. And it's fairly new at Vanquis, and I'm loving that we've got Corey and he's doing it, because it gives us more stuff to do. And he comes along and says, no, it doesn't work, redesign it, which I love. We should do one of these on content design.
Absolutely. I think we've had a question in the chat box.
I can't see any of these questions. I'm failing in my duty.
I can read it out.
Okay.
So thank you both, super insightful. Would love to understand some more about the impact on behaviour as well as anxiety, maybe not now, but when you have the analytics.
So would I. I can't wait to get the analytics. Right now, it's all based upon talking to customers and showing customers designs. Customers across with different needs and different outlooks and different opinions.
But I think we've made something that's flexible enough to dial up and dial down.
Yeah, we have.
As well. So that's we've certainly not made something that's going to restrict us or shoot itself in the foot later on, which is where we started, I think. So yeah, time will tell, and either me and Andrew will be here talking, or we'll be fired. The two ways it goes.
Great. Well, I'm conscious of time. Thank you both so much for sharing your journey and story today. And thank you for everyone that's tuned in. Obviously, we can reach out to you on LinkedIn after, Andrew and Guy, and I'm sure you'll carry on the conversations. But also, please do visit the Vanquis Bank LinkedIn page to stay in touch with future sessions. And we'll also be producing the recording, which everyone will receive by email, and hopefully some future dates for our next session.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
As well.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.